I drove 6 hours with 2 courtside tickets in my glove box and a speech rehearsed in my head. The kind of speech where you imagine the other person finally looking at you differently, finally seeing you. I was sweating through my shirt even, with the AC blasting, not because of the weather, but because I kept picturing his face when he opened that envelope. My father. The man who never said, "I'm proud of you," even when I built a company from the ground up, even when I made more in a month than he did in a year. It was always silence, or sarcasm, or worse, just that look. But this time, I thought maybe this time would be different. Knicks, finals, courtside. For a man who used to scream at the TV like the ref could hear him, this was it. My way in, my way back. I imagined him speechless, maybe even a smile that wasn't condescending. I kept playing it in my head, how he'd say, "You really did it." Or maybe just nod that nod I hadn't seen since I was 8. But if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have made that drive. I would have stayed home. Because what happened next, at that dinner table in Brooklyn, flipped everything I believed about family, about loyalty, about what it means to finally choose yourself. I didn't grow up with much. Some kids are born into comfort. I was born into a war zone with the volume turned down. Our apartment always smelled like old cigarettes and reheated regret. My dad, Frank, wasn't a man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. His silence cut deeper than any insult, and when he did speak, it was the kind of sarcasm that made your insides twist, the kind you don't realize is abuse until much later. I was the punchline to every joke, the kid who couldn't take a little tough love. Meanwhile, my brother Lucas walked on water. Straight A's, star athlete, golden child. Frank lit up when Lucas entered the room. Me? It was just background noise. I remember being 13, working 2 part-time jobs, saving up for a used laptop, so I could learn to code. Frank saw me one night typing away in the dark and said, "Typing won't fix that face of yours." I laughed, because that's what you learn to do. You laugh because crying gives them more ammo. Fast forward 10 years. I had built a tech company from scratch, hit 6 figures, then 7. I made it, on paper. But no matter how many milestones I hit, it was like throwing stones into a bottomless well. Nothing ever echoed back. No "well done," no "I'm proud of you," just more silence, or worse, mockery. And the sick part? I still craved his approval, like every achievement meant nothing unless he saw it. That's what kept me chasing. That's why I bought those Knicks tickets, because deep down I still believed there was a version of him that could be proud, and maybe a version of me that could finally rest. Dinner was supposed to be the moment. I had it all planned, reservations at this old-school Italian spot in Brooklyn, the kind my dad used to take clients to back in the day. The lighting was dim, the wine flowed too early, and the family was packed in tighter than comfort allowed. I waited until after the appetizers, until the table had just the right buzz. Then I slid the envelope across to him. He looked confused, like I'd handed him a bill, but he opened it, pulled out the tickets, and read the date. Game 1, front row. He blinked, then smiled. A real one. And for a split second I thought, I had him. I thought I'd finally cracked it. He raised his glass, the room quieted. And then he said, "To Ethan, still a disappointment, but at least now he's a rich one." The table laughed. My Uncle Ray slapped the table, choked on his beer. "Luxury gifts don't make up for being a loser, kid," he barked. Even Lucas chuckled, then caught my eye and looked away. I sat there, smiling with my teeth, but everything inside me went still. It wasn't just the insult. It was the routine, the expected cruelty, and the way everyone else fell in line like it was tradition. I realized then I hadn't been invited to dinner. I'd been lured into a rerun. Same lines, same audience, same punchline, and I was still the joke. Only this time I had something they wanted, and that changed everything. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there looking at my dad, at the ticket stub still in his hand, and then around the table. Not one person had flinched. Not my mom, who kept her eyes on her plate. Not Lucas, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Everyone just moved on like it was a toast at a wedding. Nothing out of the ordinary. I took a sip of my wine, nodded, and reached across the table. "Actually," I said, calm as ever, "I'm going to hold on to those." I took the envelope back. The table went silent. For the first time that night, Every eye was on me. My dad squinted. "What, you changed your mind?" he asked. I smiled. "No, I just remembered who I was dealing with." Uncle Ray muttered something about me being sensitive. My mom reached for my arm like that would smooth it over. But I stood up, tucked the envelope into my coat. "Enjoy the rest of dinner," I said. "I've already paid the bill." And I walked out. No yelling, no drama, just the sound of my shoes on the tile and a rush of cold air as I pushed through the door. That moment? That was the first time I ever chose myself in that room. And the first time they realized I wasn't afraid to leave it. By the time I got back to my apartment, my phone was vibrating non-stop. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. I stopped counting after 60. My mom called 7 times, Lucas 4. Even Uncle Ray tried, which was a first. But the one that caught me off guard? Frank. 3 missed calls. No voicemails. Just his name on the screen like a dare. Then came the message from his boss, Mr. Calhoun. A LinkedIn DM of all things. "Your family's concerned. Perhaps a cooling-off period would help." That's when it hit me. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the story, about what I might say, who I might tell, how this could make them look. Frank worked his whole life maintaining the image of the tough but respected family man. That dinner cracked the facade. And now he was scrambling. It wasn't guilt, it was damage control. I didn't respond. I put my phone on silent, tossed it on the couch and sat in the dark for a long time. The quiet felt better than their noise ever had. I realized something right then. I'd been raised to believe that walking away was weakness. That silence meant surrender. But this silence, this was mine. And for the first time, it didn't feel like losing. It felt like freedom. I showed up unannounced at his office in Queens. Security recognized me. Years of coming in as the dutiful son had its perks. They buzzed me through without question. I took the elevator up and walked straight past the receptionist. His door was open. He was on the phone, leaned back like he owned the place, which in a way he did. When he saw me, he froze mid-sentence. I shut the door behind me and waited. He hung up without finishing the call. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. "We need to talk," I said. "And don't worry, I'm not here to make a scene." He leaned forward, that smug calm starting to crack. "You think this is the place?" "I think this is the only place where you actually listen," I said, "because at home I'm a joke. At dinner, I'm a target. But here, your reputation matters." I told him everything. The years of silence, the ridicule, the way he lit up for Lucas and dimmed whenever I entered the room. I told him I had spent most of my life trying to win a game he never even let me play. "You think I care about the tickets," I said. "I cared about you showing up for once in your life, but I'm done. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life auditioning for a role you never planned on casting me in." He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I saw it in his face, the recognition, the fear, and beneath all that something new. Loss. Not because I was walking away, but because he knew I meant it this time. After that day, I blocked every number tied to my family. My mum, Lucas, even. The landline I hadn't thought about in years. I wasn't angry anymore, I was just done. There's a difference between cutting someone off out of spite and doing it for survival. This was the latter. I started therapy. At first, I didn't even know what to say. I just sat there week after week, trying to unlearn the idea that love had to hurt to be real. That loyalty meant swallowing pain until it rotted you from the inside. I didn't post anything. I didn't respond to messages. I just stopped. And the silence that used to scare me became something else entirely. It became peace. I started reading again, cooking for myself, sleeping through the night. It's wild how much energy you get back when you're not bracing for the next emotional hit. People think setting boundaries means building walls, but for me it felt more like opening a door and choosing who gets to come in. Frank didn't. Neither did Uncle Ray, not anymore. And every day that passed without a call or confrontation felt like proof that I'd finally reclaimed something they tried to convince me I never had. Control over my time, my space, my worth. It started with a text from Lucas. Just one sentence, "You were right." That's all it said. No apology, no explanation, just those 3 words, but they landed heavy. A week later he called. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. Turns out he'd been holding his own pain too. Different flavor, same poison. Living up to Frank's standards had cost him more than he realized. "You leaving," he said, "was the first time I saw someone win by walking away." Then came Uncle Ray's message, some half-hearted, typo-ridden text about no hard feelings and family's family. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Not everything needs closure. Some doors are better left shut. But what stayed with me was that Lucas had started to question the script we were all handed. That maybe, just maybe, the cycle could break in more than one place. I wasn't just healing. I was giving permission whether I meant to or not. And that mattered, more than any Knicks ticket ever could. A few weeks later, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from someone named Danielle Soto. The name didn't ring a bell at first, but she'd worked with Frank years ago. Said she'd heard through the grapevine about what happened. She told me she'd watched from the sidelines as my dad talked down to everyone, not just me. She remembered how he'd brag about keeping his sons in line, like we were employees. "What you did," she wrote, "was brave. Not just for you, but for people like me who never got to speak up." I stared at that message for a long time, because for the first time it wasn't about the pain, it was about the impact. My silence, my absence, had echoed. People noticed, people felt seen, and that's when it clicked. This story wasn't just mine. It belonged to anyone who's ever been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to love them. Anyone who stayed quiet to keep the peace and lost themselves in the process. Danielle's message wasn't just validation, it was proof. Proof that walking away wasn't selfish. It was necessary, and sometimes it's exactly what sets others free. Last week I was walking through the park when I saw a father and son tossing a basketball near a bench. The kid couldn't have been older than 8, grinning every time he missed, and the dad kept saying, "Good try, champ." It wasn't the scene itself that got me. It was how normal it was. No sarcasm, no tension, just warmth. I sat down and watched for a bit, not out of envy, but because something inside me softened. That was the dad I used to imagine, the one I thought Knicks tickets could conjure. But sitting there I realized, I don't need that dream anymore. I've become the man I needed when I was that boy. Not for anyone else, just for me. I stood up, walked past them, and the dad nodded. I nodded back. No words exchanged, just a quiet mutual recognition of 2 different stories crossing paths in the sunlight. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt whole. I felt free. And in that moment, I knew I never needed his approval. I just needed mine.